Welcome to another episode of ECAC Hockey Decision Makers. So happy to be joined by Harvard women's head coach Laura Bellamy. Laura, welcome aboard.
Thanks for having me, Pierre.
It's good to have you aboard. Now let's talk about you and your travel to become the head coach at Harvard University. I know you played there many moons ago, but talk about how you came back to your alma mater and you're coaching there for the first time as a head coach.
Yeah, so grateful to be in this position. I'm from Duluth, Minnesota. I lived there for the first 18 years of my life, and then played here at Harvard from 09 to 13, and then was fortunate enough to stay on at Harvard from 13 to 15 right after I graduated for 2 years as an assistant coach. Didn't necessarily expect to stay in coaching. I was kind of just dipping my toes in and seeing what I thought of it. But our other assistant coach, Maura Kroll, went to Duluth in 2015 to take over that program, and I made the decision to go with and take that opportunity as an assistant coach there, and kind of felt like that would help me figure out, do I like coaching or do I just like still being at Harvard? Boston's a great place to live, and it was fun being there with some people I had graduated with in 2013 and kind of experiencing Boston as a non-student for a couple of years. So I just wanted to see, like, okay, is it that, or do I really like this coaching thing? And being able to go to a scholarship school and in a different league and get a different experience, I knew that would be, help me figure it out, but also be really valuable. So I definitely had a hunch that I liked coaching and wanted to stay in it. So I was at Duluth from 2015 to 2023, and then took this role in August of 2023, and it's been about a year and a half now.
Yeah, no, I've been watching. I've been to a lot of your games, and it's been fun. I know it hasn't gone exactly the way everybody wants it to go, but you're part of a building program. What is it about coaching, Laura, that really excites you?
I think, there's so much to it. It's such it's a hard job, and there's so much to it, but it's very fulfilling too. And, I think what got me into it in the first place was, the experience that I had in college, 18 to 22, very formative years. I had a really good experience. I loved my time at Harvard. Our we had a blast. They're the people in my life that I've had the most fun with, that they've also pushed me the most in my life, really to date. And we have so many stories that we can go back to and memories, but so much of it was they pushed me as much as anybody has in my life, and just such a great environment to get better as a hockey player, as a student, as a person. And I really loved that experience, and to be able to be part of that now. Essentially, as soon as I left college, I felt like I want to be part of those years for other people and help them in their life at that time, to be, kind of figure out who they are, what's important to them, and develop as hockey players and as people. So to be in this role now, I'm just so grateful to have this opportunity, and coaching all the way through has been exactly that for me, just part of a development process for kids when they're 18 to 22 in those years. And it's been a lot of fun.
Everybody has mentors. Like, I'm not afraid to admit it. My mentors are Joe Marsh from St. Lawrence University, Scotty Bowman, the late Badger Bob Johnson. I've been so fortunate to work from some amazing men and awesome coaches. Do you have any mentors or role models that you try to follow?
I think it's easy for me to say right off the bat that Maura Kroll, now the head coach at Dartmouth, has. I'm just so grateful for everything she's done for me. So much of it started with an opportunity, giving me an opportunity to go to Duluth, and for me, that was my hometown, so it was extra special to be able to go back. That's the team I grew up rooting for. But really, it was an opportunity to go to a great historic program, also kind of taking on a build at the time in 2015. And so it started with that opportunity, but it's really been so much more than that. I've learned so much from her. I think she's a fantastic leader, great hockey coach, but more than that, she develops people at a really high level, whether that's, staff, players, other coaches, great coaching tree for her. And I'm a part of it and proud to be a part of it. And a great friend of mine too. We we talk all the time. It's fun to have her back in this league now, but she really stands out for me. She's done so much for me, and I'm just forever indebted to her for that.
You talk about the league and the ECAC, and the women's side of the ECAC is just a beast. It's so hard to play night in and night out. Were you expecting that when you came from Duluth back to Harvard?
Yeah, it's, probably the biggest difference is, the WCHA playing teams back to back. That's sort of a challenge in its own right. And now, it's just different. Like it's a little bit harder to scout teams when you're playing two different opponents, but it's nice to get a new opponent too. I think there's some of that I really like. So, just changing leagues, I wasn't really sure what to expect, but I think, especially with a lot of fifth year players, the talent in this league, some of that older experience right now, the physicality. I mean, it's all there. It's no secret that our league's one of the top leagues, and, look no further than the PWHL draft last year and the top picks. And so we're producing high level talent. For us to be able to play against it every night is pretty fun. And, it certainly helps in recruiting to players want to play in the ECAC. Like they know what this league is about. And I think it's as good as it's ever been right now.
Is it different recruiting at a scholarship school versus a non-scholarship school?
I think recruiting anywhere is really about, filtering sort of what you offer and what recruits are looking for. So there's maybe some of that on the front end at an Ivy League school, whether it's the academic piece, whether it's going to work financially for families, but ultimately, you do that everywhere, filter through and try to find matches. Certainly, it's the value match is really important too. So once we've sort of figured out our pool that would be interested in an Ivy League school and interested in Harvard, and it's something that they could do, then it's about finding, really good hockey players who value their education and are high character kids. They're going to bring character. We always say we look for character and characters. We want some fun kids in there who are down to clown too. You need some of that, but we want high character kids, and we know that that's how we're going to build a strong locker room.
The one thing that's interesting, when I was at St. Lawrence, we used to say we need to own from Ottawa to Montreal. There was a certain area that we needed to own. Do you feel the same way at Harvard? Like, do you say we got to dominate that area in recruiting, or do you just go worldwide and cast the net?
I think the way I would put it is like we want to dominate everywhere, essentially. I think it's particularly important, hockey in Boston and Massachusetts is so strong that we want the best players from here. And we take pride in getting those players and being in those battles with, the Beanpot schools. It's not just a battle in the Beanpot, it's in the recruiting too. And so we're certainly, if I had to pick an area, really focused on making sure we get the best players from right here. But ultimately, I think it's also been a focus of our staff to make sure the Harvard student body is made up of people from 102 different countries last year, all over the world. And we want our locker room to be a reflection of that as much as it can be. Hockey's not played everywhere, but it's played a lot of places. And we want to bring players in. We want to bring the best players in wherever they're from. I think for us, that's going to be a lot of different areas, certainly Minnesota, Toronto, Western Canada, Europe. We're going everywhere and just trying to find the best players and the best people and get them to Harvard.
I'm on the Hockey Hall of Fame selection committee, and last year we inducted two magnificent women players, both from the state of Minnesota, Natalie Darwitz and Chrissy Wendell-Pohl. And I'm sure you're familiar with both those young ladies. I'm curious as to why women's hockey in Minnesota is just seeming to explode, unlike in mostly any other place in the United States.
Well, it could be a whole other conversation, really, but I think a big part of it is the model. You play youth hockey where you live all the way through, and Minnesota's had essentially you play for your local high school, and Minnesota's had so many teams, and whether it's Class A or AA based on school size, the numbers are really good, and people don't necessarily want to leave Minnesota to go play at a hockey academy. Not that that's the wrong choice, but in Minnesota, it's really like, hey, let's play for our local community. There's a lot of pride in that. And I think there's a lot to be said for the outdoor rinks and what goes on there. And just, the skills that you build by playing pond hockey. That's always something that Minnesota has taken pride in. But I really think there's a lot to be said for, playing for your high school or for your school or your community all the way through. The numbers are in a good spot. And, it's competitive throughout the state, and, they take a lot of pride in it there. And, it's in a strong place. So we want to keep recruiting from Minnesota.
You talked about the PWHL before and how that's having ramifications on college hockey. Do you see it impacting a lot of how you recruit? Are people asking you, hey, if I come to play for you, are you going to cultivate me to be ready to play in the PWHL, or is that something that's down the road?
I think the conversations with recruits are similar in that, our goal is to develop individual players as much as possible while we coalesce a team and try to win championships. So you're trying to do both of those things and balance them. And the recruiting conversations were always about, people have said for forever, like, where can I go develop? Individual development and player development to get to the highest level has always been part of the conversation. But that's typically been, the national team, the Olympic team. Now to have it be a professional league and be your career and your livelihood, I think that's shifted the conversation a little bit, but I think it's similar, and the destination is just a little bit different now. But we're always talking about, how do we develop you at a high level, help you get there. What are our, now it's a little bit more, what are our connections in the league? How are we preparing our players for that? And I think, that's where our experience at Duluth was so valuable. We have, I think, 13 players from UMD who we coached in the league between last year and this year. I think there's 11 active players right now. And, really proud of that. They're great hockey players. It's fun to stay in touch with them and kind of stay connected to the league and ultimately help our players at Harvard get there too.
What's the biggest thing in terms of recruiting right now that you say to yourself, if we do this, we're going to get that? If we don't do this, we're not going to get that. Is there one thing in particular that stands out for you, a part of a rebuilding program at Harvard?
Oh, that's a good question. I think, the biggest thing is getting in the rinks and having presence and having people see that Harvard is everywhere. Been to 2 games this week, going to a practice later today. Like, that's my schedule. One of our assistant coaches is out in Minnesota right now. So it's, you got to pound the pavement, as they say, and get out there and have a presence. And we've certainly gotten that feedback that, people feel like Harvard is there. And I think that's an important step for us. Certainly continue to develop our teams and get results. That always helps in recruiting. But on our side of it too, I think so much comes back to, you can go into a rank and find the players that you like. It's pretty easy to, the talent stands out, but it's the research after that. It's the conversations after that with their coaches, their people close to them on what kind of, are they a hockey player? We want hockey players who go to Harvard and value their education, but we want them to be hockey players. We want them to love hockey, have a passion for it, be great learners, want to be coached. Those are the things we look for. And so you got to do the research to find that out. Certainly then June 15th comes around and we have conversations with those players themselves, but the people around them, I think you can learn a lot. And just kind of by observing too, it's important for us to see, how do players, treat the officials, how do they talk to their parents after a game? These are young kids, so you're not going to take one interaction and hold it against them necessarily, if it's on the, negative side. But I think you see a lot of positive too. And if you do see something that you have a question about, it's important to follow up, because that's what we would do when they're here. Our players are going to get honesty from us, and we're going to have hard conversations, and we're going to push them. So those are the things we want to have in the recruiting process too.
How do you feel about your recruiting class coming in for next season?
Super excited. we love those guys. It's been so fun. One thing that we're kind of going through for the first time is this is our first recruiting class that we started recruiting basically, day one. So got here in August of 23. That class had started to be recruited. I started with Duluth, kind of recruited for Duluth in June and July, and then shifted to Harvard. But that group we got, that we knew right away, this is going to be our first class. And what we have with them is these 2 years of leading into it, going to their games, talking to their families, visits, things like that. And it's really exciting when your players on your current team, you've known them, just helps so much if you've known them for 3, 4, 5, 6 years. That's something right now with our current team we're really working on, just kind of making up for lost time because we weren't part of their recruiting process. So we didn't know them when they were in 11th, 12th grade. And so that part has, we're doing that with our current team, but with this group, it's fun. It's the first group we recruited. It's a big class. We'll have like 4 forwards, 3D and a goalie, I think, ultimately when all is said and done. So, big class, and just really excited about that group, and they're excited to be part of this build and want to move it forward as badly as anybody.
We're getting near the end of the racetrack now in terms of the regular season. Everybody can shock the world because basically everybody makes the playoffs. How do you pursue the playoffs as a coach of a team that's not in a primary position?
Yeah, I mean, you can end someone's season. It's as simple as that. You have that opportunity. So if that doesn't fire you up, I don't know what does. I think for us, we want to be playing our best hockey. So, this last weekend of the regular season, it's important for us to, we feel like we've gotten better every day. I think we're really hard to play against. We're trying to drive possession more and more as much as possible. So, but we want to have a good weekend, and then you want to feel good going into the playoffs and understand that it's a clean slate. Everybody's record is 0-0, and for us, it's one game. And for us, every single game, save for a couple, we've been in really tight games. We're used to that. We're battle tested, and we want to end someone's season.
Is there one coach in the league? I say this to everybody that I interview on the men's side and the women's side. Is there one coach in the league you say, darn, I wish I had some of his players or her players?
Well, I think there's a lot of good teams in the league, and you could say that about any team. I think right now, Cornell really impresses me in terms of having a high level of talent, but the team game they play, the 5-player offense in the offensive zone with possession, is really impressive. And I just give Doug and their staff a lot of credit. It's not just that they have good players, which they do, but I think you can tell they're well coached and work well together. And Cornell, I think they've been probably the toughest opponent for us. They've been the toughest matchup for us this year, and have a lot of respect for what they're doing, and the speed and the talent that they have offensively, the way they use each other too. It's been pretty impressive.
Coach, before you talked about the Bean Pod schools, and you're one of the Bean Pod schools, Northeastern, BU, BC, they're the other 3. How much do you think the women's Bean Pod and access to having TD Bank, how does that help you in the recruiting?
It's huge. I mean, we didn't really, last year was the first year, this year was the second year. I think especially last year, we didn't necessarily know what we were going to get at the Garden. What would it be like? What would it feel like? What would it look like? And it's been really clear that, you're going to play in front of a lot of people, especially in that championship game. And that's, it's similar to the PWHL. Those crowds in that league have been, really impressive. The attendance is up this year compared to last year. So, we're trying to recruit hockey players who want to play hockey at the highest level. And if that's the case, then the best way to prepare yourself is to be in environments like that. So, not only is it the best tournament in college hockey, I think it's so fun. There's so much on the line in terms of the rivalries and the bragging rights, and both the men's and women's bean pots. There's just so much fun to watch and be a part of. But then to know that you're going to play in front of a crowd like that under that kind of pressure, I think is exactly what players should be looking for to help develop themselves in their game and be ready to play, whether that's national team, Olympic level, or the pro level.
You just talked about the Olympics. We're going into an Olympic cycle right now. Are you worried that you might not have a couple of your young ladies going forward, that they may be part of the Olympic development program going into Milan and Cortina?
It's always part of the conversation, especially, in recruiting and some of the, particularly for us, some of the European conversations right now, because it's coming so soon. And I think for us right now, most of our players who have that Olympic thought, their age is going to make more sense for 2030. So then it kind of becomes this conversation in the next cycle. But I think it'll be an interesting year. Like the US and Canada, from what I understand, will not centralize, which they have for the last 4 or 5 Olympics. So could be kind of a different looking year. I think there's a lot of questions about what it'll look like, but it's the Olympic years in college hockey are always an exciting time, especially if it sort of shortens the gap between teams, creates higher parity. And the Olympics are pretty darn fun. We're excited to see what it looks like. And, we'll certainly have Harvard alums playing in the Olympics. So excited to cheer those guys on.
How will you approach this last weekend going into the playoffs? Do you change your approach as a coach? Do you keep it the same? How do you pursue what will be the last weekend before the playoffs?
Yeah, I think we're sticking to our process. I'm really proud of our team. If you're somebody who can follow us on the inside at practice every day and in the weight room, excuse me, you see, like, we prepare at a really high level. I don't know if this is going away anytime soon.
Take your time. We're good. We're not going anywhere.
Nothing coffee can't solve.
I'll give you a little of my tea if I could.
I think it's important this time of year, though, to stay with our process. And that's been really consistent for us. The biggest thing with the one game, we're not sure if we'll play Friday, Saturday, probably more likely Saturday. So it gives you an extra day in the week, actually. So just, we talked with our staff a couple weeks ago about how we would lay that out and where to get the rest, and just making sure, our practices are pretty short and intense right now. Try to cover a lot of detail and video. And, I think that's worked well for us. So essentially, keep the same process, try to keep getting better, and try to have, make sure we have a good weekend so that we're ready for the playoffs.
Well, I know that a lot of people that are Harvard alums are really excited about your recruiting class coming in. It was great to see you and the passion you have for that recruiting class. It looks like there's going to be a resurgence for Harvard women's hockey, which is awesome. It's an important franchise in the ECAC. I know that. Is there anything you want to try to accomplish between now and the start of next year that maybe most coaches would say, no, I wouldn't be doing that? Is there something you want to try to do to make your program even speed up a little bit more in terms of the development?
Oh, so much. There's so many notes we make throughout the year to try to get better. And I think from the first year to the second year, we did a lot of work in the spring and the summer in so many different areas. I think a big one for us is just continuing to build relationships with our players. I mean, it might sound funny because we see them every day, we're in it every day. But again, typically, your older players, this is the 5th or 6th year that you know them. For us, our seniors next year, it'll be our 3rd year with them. So, we've really only had 2 seasons. It came really quickly in that first year. So this almost has felt like year 1 in some ways, whereas year 1 was almost like year 0, year start, and that group was so great in terms of their resilience and just ability to handle change and, really laid the foundation. But now we've been able to start building on it. So A lot of things stand out, some video that we want to put together and make sure, our video playbook is being built so that we can, hit the ground running with it. We'll work on, like I said, on the relational side, get some home visits into our current players through the spring and summer. I think that's going to be really important because that's what we missed. We see them every day. We know what their Harvard life is like, what classes they're taking, what they're interested in, but we didn't, and we've gotten to know their families a little bit, but we didn't get, I want to go to their hometown and I want to see their gym and I want to be in their house, if they'll have me. And, what is it like? What do you value? What is it like here at home when you're not at Harvard? What does it look like for you? And so that'll be important. And yeah, just always looking at, our processes and how we can be, more efficient. I thought we got more efficient in practice and throughout the week this year, compared to last year. So we'll keep working on that. But that excites me. That's a whole different season itself, but it's, that's what's fun about coaching is you kind of get different parts of the year where you're working on different things. So we're excited to put our heads together and make this program better in the off season.
Coach Laura Bellamy, best of luck with all your plans. I know you're going in the right direction. It's exciting to see all the work is finally starting to pay off for you and your staff. Wish you the best the rest of the season and into the playoffs. And thank you so much for joining us on another edition of VCAC Hockey Decision Makers. Thank you, Coach.
Thanks, Pierre. I really appreciate it.
Yep.